Welcome to Atanasda Chapter 7 Beta, in which we talk about more third declension mini paradigms. So first up, we're going to talk about nasal stems. Just a reminder, here are your masculine and feminine endings for the third declension. Nasal stem means any word where the stem ends in the letter nu. Our sample noun is going to be ho hemon tu hemonos. So remember that in the third declension, you find the true stem by going to the genitive singular and lopping off the ending. So our stem is hemon, and we add our endings, and we apply some little rules. So our little rule is a nasal plus a final sigma. Final just means it's the last letter of the word. The final sigma disappears, and so that affects the nominative and vocative singular. And then the nasal plus the internal sigma, which means it's not the last letter of the word, affects the dative plural, and in that case, the nasal disappears. So with those rules, we get hemon for the nominative and vocative singular, and hemosi for the dative plural. For the accents, I'll direct you to page 124. I do not have my big grammar book with me, so I don't know why we change from the acute to the circumflex, from the nominative to the genitive, but I do know that there's a rule that states if your ultima is long, then you cannot have a circumflex on the penult, which is why the genitive plural circumflex changes to an acute. So now let's look at two more little mini paradigms, the labial stems and the liquid stems. So the labials are b, p, and p. Remember that in true ancient Greek pronunciation, the difference between pi and phi is that your lips are in the exact same places they are for the English letter P. However, the pi is not followed by a breath of air, which is very difficult for native English speakers to produce, whereas the pi, that last letter there, which we call phi, is followed by a puff of air. The liquids are ul and so called because you never fully close off your mouth, so they're sort of liquids, unlike the rest of the consonants. So our sample nouns for the labial is hoklops tu klopos, and for the liquids is horetor tu retoros. So let's write out our stems. We get them from the genitive singular. You'll notice the true stem of klops ends in a pi, and the true stem of retor ends in omicron rho. So we'll add all of our endings, apply some rules. The labial plus a sigma anywhere in the word produces a psi, so that affects nominative, vocative singular, and dative plural, giving us klops, klopes, and klopsi. Everything else is unchanged. For accents, I'll direct you to page 336. Again, I don't have my big grammar book, so I can't explain why we change to the circumflex in those places. For retor, let's add our endings and then apply some rules. One rule that matters here is when a rho is followed by a sigma as the last letter of the word, so the final sigma, then the sigma goes away, we keep the rho, and we lengthen the vowel that comes before the rho. This is called compensatory lengthening, which is compensating for the loss of that sigma. So that's the nominative and vocative singular. The sigma goes away, and the vowel before the rho gets long to compensate, giving us retor with an omega instead of an omicron. Again, for accents, I will direct you to page 337. I don't know all the rules, but I can tell you that if the ultima is long, you'll notice in the genitive singular, it's retoros with the accent on the antepenult, and the ultima is short there. And the ultima remains short in several of these, but once we get to the genitive plural and the ultima is long, the rule states that the acute accent has to move from the antepenult to the penult. Then in the rest of the cases, it's on the antepenult. So last up, let's talk about some third declension adjectives. So just a reminder, the previous adjectives we've seen look like kalos, kale, kalon. When you see a dictionary entry that looks like that, we call this a 2-1-2 adjective, meaning that the masculine and the neuter follow the second declension endings and the feminine follows the first declension endings. Note that kalos, kale, and kalon are all nominative singular. Now we're going to see a new kind of adjective dictionary entry, which has got two parts, sophron, sophron, with omega nu in the first part and omicron nu in the second part. These are third declension adjectives, and specifically, if you've got two things in the dictionary entry, we call it a two-termination or two-ending third declension adjective, which means that there are two different sets of endings, one shared by the masculine and feminine, and the other is exclusive to the neuter. Both of these are nominative singular. So sophron with the omega is masculine and feminine nominative singular, and sophron with the omicron is neuter nominative singular. So let's look at all the forms. Again, we're going to find our true stem, in this case, by going to the neuter. So ignore the masculine and feminine. So sophron with the short omicron is your true stem. Let's start with the masculine and feminine and add some endings, and then apply rules. So rule number 1 is the nu plus the final sigma results in the dropping of the sigma and lengthening the vowel before the nu to compensate. So that's why your nominative singular in the masculine and feminine gets the omega. But since the true stem is omicron, you'll actually see the omicron in the remaining cases for the masculine and feminine. So the other rule is that the nu plus an internal sigma, i.e. not the last letter, results in the loss of the nu. So you get sophrosi. So let's look now at the neuter endings. If you recall, in the neuter endings, the nominative, accusative, and vocative singular don't have an ending. So that means that sophron with the omicron is our final word there. Add the endings to all the other ones, see if there's any rules that apply. Oh, look, that one still applies. So we're going to get rid of the nu in the dative plural, and we're left with sophrosi. For accents, again, I'll direct you to page 125. There's a couple of rules I can tell you about. One of them is that if the ultima is long, you can't have a circumflex on the penult. So that means that in the masculine and feminine nominative singular, because the ultima is now omega nu, you have to change that circumflex to an acute. So I'm filling out the rest of those forms that are the same as the nominative. And then the other rule I can tell you about is that if the ultima is long, then you can't have an acute on the antepenult. It has to move to the penult. So when we get to the genitive plural, you'll see long ultima. That accent has to move from the antepenult to the penult. That's it for now. I will do another video for the other grammar topic of this chapter. Thank you. Bye.